Hello and welcome to the Arise Family Fellowship podcast. This is Josh. We're excited to be continuing in our series, Church Conversations. It's been a while since we've put an episode up, but this upcoming Sunday, as of today, which is the 5th of June, we'll be celebrating 80 years of St. Baptist Church / Arise Family Fellowship. We'll be sharing some pictures and stories about our founding. And so this episode is going to be special. I have joining with me today Fred Vogel, who was pastor here for 34 years. So we're really excited for that. We'll jump right in here. Fred, why don't you share a little bit about maybe your upbringing and how you became a believer, how you heard about Jesus?
Sure. Well, Josh, I want to thank you for inviting me. This is a good conversation. I'm looking forward to this. I wasn't raised in a Christian home. I actually became a follower of Christ before my parents did.
Wow.
We had a neighbor back when I was very young, first, second, third grade, across the street from us in Chicago that invited me and my two sisters to go to Sunday school. That was our first exposure.
Wow.
I have memories of being half of the Red Sea laying on the floor, and when the other student raised his hand, we rolled apart, and and that was a few years ago. And the pastor was from Scotland, so he had this great brogue. I loved to listen to him. I didn't know what he was talking about, but that was off and on. We would go, and I really didn't want to go because if I went to Sunday school, I missed an episode of Tarzan on television.
Can't miss that.
Oh, yeah. Then we moved, and when I was in 8th grade, I had gone to a summer camp. We had gone off and on to a Baptist church in Chicago, and they had a camp that they went to. And at that camp is when I realized, when other students got up and told their story about what Christ meant to them, I thought, I don't know what they're talking about. Wow. I knew there was something different. So it was at that camp that that night, alone on my bunk bed, I prayed to receive Christ as my Savior.
Wow. That's really special. That's really cool. So then what was sort of that journey for you from becoming a believer to deciding to sort of serve and be involved and eventually, I guess, become a pastor?
Yeah, it was fairly early. In high school, we didn't really have a youth pastor at the time, and we had a youth sponsor. It was a single woman. You might call her a spinster for years ago. She was older, but she loved the Lord, and she wanted to serve. And they had material for students to read and participate in a youth service. So I became a leader in that youth ministry, and then when we did get a youth pastor, he really discipled me.
Wow.
And I took over the responsibility for the junior highs, and I did that through college and through seminary.
Wow.
That was my training to be a pastor in actually serving.
Yeah. So what did you kind of learn from this guy who was discipling you? What was that like?
Basic things. Reading your Bible, the way you read your Bible, praying daily. He taught us the practice of fasting
Mm,
before making big decisions and all. Um, uh, Remaining pure and
right.
things like that. Yeah.
Wow. That's really special that you got to have that. So then you were leading, you were helping with junior high stuff, and you were serving in that way. Um, what made you decide to say, I want to do this ministry thing?
Yeah, that was actually at the beginning. Uh, by the time I was a sophomore in high school,
Mm,
I felt that I'd wanted to be a pastor.
wow.
We used to say, I felt the
The
call,
call, I was gonna say.
Yeah. And the I remember going to our pastor and saying, Pastor, I feel called to be a pastor.
Mm,
And he didn't get excited at all. He said, well, we'll see, and so it was more of a matter of, and I'm glad he did that, because
yeah,
he didn't just use hype or something,
right.
but we'll see how you grow in the
Develop.
Lord. And that was the impression I got from
Yeah,
him.
that's great. So then, where did you jump right in, I guess, in service and in ministry? I know you went to school for a little while. What was that experience like
Yeah.
for you?
The church had its own, like, Bible college courses.
Mm,
We called it a Bible Institute.
yeah,
And so I got my initial training in college, not at a Bible school. It was pretty traditional among the Baptists that we were a part of, um, to go to a Bible college,
yeah,
and it was all Baptist. Well, I went to uh, secular colleges
yeah.
that were in the Chicago area,
Mm,
got my college training, undergraduate work there, graduated from University of Illinois. Uh, they have a campus in Chicago, and that's
yeah.
where I went. And but I got my Bible training and ministry training in the church on Monday nights. We had two 1-hour classes that I would take,
Yeah,
and but while I was in college, I also took um, Greek because I knew I would need that in the
right,
future.
right.
And then I went on after college. I went on to Trinity uh, uh, Divinity School,
Mm,
um, and um, uh, and that's where I got more specialized training.
right. Wow. So that's really wonderful. What brought you then all the way out from Chicago to Sandy to
Yeah,
pastor
yeah.
the church out here?
Well, it's a bit of a story.
Yeah.
Let me know if I'm going on too long
No,
here.
no, that's all right.
But I had pastored for 8 years in a rural area
Hmm.
of Illinois, and I loved it. Mary and I just loved that area. We got married, and a week later, I was a pastor and she was a pastor's wife.
Wow.
I was 24, she was 22,
Thrown in the deep end.
and yeah, whoa. And I would recommend that you work as an associate or work in the church
Mm,
on a professional level before you go out on your own. Anyway, but the church was 24 people,
yeah.
and we saw it grow, and
Mm,
I grew and loved it. And then I went back to Chicago
mm,
to work with the pastor that had been my pastor.
right.
And I discovered that he wasn't quite the man that I thought he was. And um, he was ran the church like a business.
Mm,
My experience in this town of Pecatonica had been one of seeing a church as a family and
yeah.
um, a real fellowship, but
Yeah.
the other was goals to be met, structure, and
Mm,
and all of that. And I knew I had to leave. And a year before we left, I said to Mary, "Right now we can't leave, but a year from now we're going to have to make a change." Well, we were so independent as a Baptist church that we had no association. They had
Oh,
pulled out of the conservative Baptist movement
wow.
because they thought conservative Baptists were too liberal.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it was that fundamentalist of a group, Anyway, so we were praying, Lord, what do you want us to do? How do I find another church? Where do you want us to go?
Yeah.
And we got a phone call from Don Edgren.
Uh-huh.
I had his two oldest daughters in a junior high youth group. And
Wow.
I didn't really know Don. He was a parent,
Sure.
but he had kept track of us over the years.
Mm.
And he said they were looking for a pastor and would I send a resume? So that got the ball rolling.
Wow. Wow. So during this time, you and Mary, you're married and you guys are in ministry. Um, how many of your kids were born out in Chicago?
Okay. Uh, we came to Sandy
Mm.
with all 5 children.
Okay, yeah.
Our oldest was 11 and our youngest was 4 months.
Wow, that's quite a spread.
Right. We had 2 sons, 2 daughters, and another son. And we had 2 guys come out, Bill Kitchen and Don Bench, and drive a moving van, like a U-Haul truck,
Yeah.
loaded up with our stuff, and they drove it out, and then we just brought the family out.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was there a visit? Did you come to visit?
Oh yeah, we
Yeah.
came in May, and they checked us out, and we checked them out,
Yeah.
and then in August is when we actually moved out here and started.
Yeah. So when you guys came out, were we still meeting at the old building
No,
we had bought
it was here.
here at the
I
new?
came in 82, and I think we moved into the new building,
Yeah.
in 1978, I believe.
Right. Okay.
And what really attracted me was that we had a sanctuary that could double as a gym.
Right.
And I thought, whoa, what potential for young families, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And I thought this was very insightful for the church to make that kind of move,
That's right. Yeah, all the way back in the late 70s to say we're
Mhm.
going to put some basketball hoops in our sanctuary.
There were some people that visited us and they left because they said, I just, it doesn't seem like church here.
Yeah.
There's no windows, no,
That's right.
much less glass stained windows.
That's right.
There are basketball hoops, and
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like church to me.
Yeah.
So there were people that had that traditional bent that could make the transition.
Yeah. So you came in to a church family and sort of a church structure that had been going on for a while. And from a culture, the Midwest, Chicago, that, was different. What were sort of in that first season of coming into ministry here? I guess one is what attracted you? What was kind of the call that brought you out here? And then I guess, second part of that, or maybe what were some of the challenges, that you found in that first season of
Okay.
ministry here?
One of the first things that attracted us was the similarity between this church and Pecatonica.
Mm.
It wasn't run like a business. There was a woman on the search committee whose husband had died recently, and there were pairs of men that would come out each month and do things around her house
Mm.
that her husband normally did, getting up on tall ladders to clean a light that hung from the ceiling and repairing faucets and things like that.
Yeah.
And she told me, this is typical.
Mm.
One of the other men on the search committee said, we have a widow in the church, and we were able to put together enough funds to re-roof her house.
Wow.
And guys in the church did that. I thought, whoa,
Yeah.
that is what a church ought to be. It's a
Yeah.
family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was initially it. The other thing is that was really attractive to me was that the uh, leadership in talking with me said they weren't interested in just someone who would come and preach and teach and lead, but they wanted someone who would get into the community. Um, they wanted someone who would interface with business, education, city government, who'd be willing to get to know people and things like that.
Yeah.
And that really attracted me. I thought that, again, is what a church ought to be. We ought to be part of the community, not a fortress or a silo away from everyone else, you know. So those are two things that really attracted me.
Yeah.
I forgot the second part of the question.
What were, I guess, some challenges or in the transition coming here in that first season of ministry?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't a hunter, you know, and I hadn't fished very much. And the guys really tried to break me into that stuff. That was really nice. My first birthday here, they presented me with a rifle, you know, and
wow.
So 30-06. It came from Bill Camp. Yeah, got one of his.
That's great.
And people, Cunningham's, took me out hunting and things like that. But it was some of that was difficult to adjust to.
Right.
And I'm not sure that I would say that it was a big struggle because the community had already switched from being a logging town to something more.
Right.
The Max line had come out to Gresham, and the development behind the post office, the new post office at that time, had been built, and so there was some growth and movement, and so it wasn't so much like an old logging town, but it was more almost like an extended suburb of Portland. Not really a suburb, separate, but it reminded me of. It wasn't as rural as Pecatonica, but it was easy to get to know people here.
And that was, I think, the beginning of sort of Sandy becoming kind of a sleeper town. So many people working out in Portland, and they drive out here, and sort of this still part of sort of the metro, you know, Portland area. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
A lot of growth happening just population-wise.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing is we had so many people right from the beginning that would step up and really help and get involved. We really had to give attention to some structure because we were almost structured for conflict. It seemed like every 10 years, as I looked at the history, there was some big blow up. And it was about the time when a church needs to kind of have a fresh vision, you know?
Yeah.
And instead of having a fresh vision, there was a split of some kind, you know? And so we had pastor after pastor after pastor. And my predecessor lasted the longest. He was here 12 years, Ed Grable. And he was a really good pastor. But there was a conflict there too. And so we actually transitioned more from being totally congregational, where all the decisions were made by the church in a vote, to more of a elder-led church. And that settled down some of the conflicts. People told me there had been some business meetings that lasted till midnight, and there were people arguing with one another. And I said, we can't have that, you know. And so anyway, I had help with people like Rich Marshall, Roy Martin. They were very helpful in putting structure together that would be typical in most churches. And we would still be a Baptist church, but we wouldn't have everything go to everyone,
Yeah.
and have so many opinions.
Right. So you were serving then here for a really long time that you were
Mm.
in ministry here and in leadership here. I know it's a big question covering quite a long period, but what were some of the big things that you learned about service? I guess over your years as a
Yeah.
pastor.
The first thing that comes to mind, Josh, is that when God provides, He provides through people.
Mm,
Um, I know He provides financially as well, and materially in other ways,
mm,
physical gifts and things like that. But the things that I look back on as God really helping the church, it was always tied with people.
mm,
Let me give you an example. There's this affected most of the churches of Sandy, so it wasn't just
mm,
us. But in 1990, no, 89, 1989,
mm,
Terry Dirks, who was part of Multnomah School of the Bible,
mm,
started what he called prayer summits at Cannon Beach Conference Center
mm.
for pastors.
Yeah.
And he said, we're going to have a prayer summit where we're going to get together for 4 days of prayer. There aren't going to be classes on prayer. We're just going to pray. And that scared the daylights out of me. What in the world is that like? And some of the pastors of Sandy, there were about 4 of us, got together and we went together to that. And God used Terry Dirks and the other leaders of that to really transform the prayer lives of pastors.
Mm.
And that had an influence on the churches then,
Yeah, of course.
but it actually had an influence on the town as well, because up until that time, the pastors had gotten together monthly for luncheons, but we always kept ourselves at an arm's distance.
Right.
We always had to tell one another how great we were doing in ministry, to impress each other. And at that prayer summit, we learned to be real.
Yeah.
And it was okay to have needs and to ask for help and things like that with one another as pastors. And so after that, we got together and prayed for our community, not just our own churches, but for the community. And in that setting, there was a terrible flood on the Mississippi River, and there were calls out from for assistance from St. Louis. And so we said, well, maybe we could put clothes together or something. And they said, we don't need clothes. We need people to come and muck out buildings.
Wow.
And so we put together a group of people and churches, and we said, we'll drive one weekend there, work all week, and then drive the next weekend nonstop back. No motels or anything like that, And so we got there and we were serving, and they said, what denomination are you from? Because they had a lot of churches doing this. And we were standing in a circle. I remember this. And one man said, well, I'm from a Lutheran church. Another guy said, I'm from Assembly of God. And we said, we're from a Baptist church. And so one of the other individuals said, I guess we're from the Church of Sandy.
Yeah.
And that became kind of the new way we looked at ourselves, that we weren't in competition with one another.
Yeah.
We were the Church of Sandy.
Yeah. That's
so
really special.
Anyway, God provided a Terry Dirks to influence churches of Sandy, not just Sandy Baptist. And that kind of cooperation really turned the heads of people in Sandy. They saw, they're not fighting with one another or anything. they seemed to like each other, and we began to have services where we combined
Yeah.
and did provided food for needy families and things like that. We did that all together.
Yeah. That's really special. I love that. And that's had an impact to this day.
Yeah.
We're genuine friendships that me and Mike have with pastors and leaders of other churches in Sandy.
Yeah.
Just continuing in that spirit
Right.
that was I didn't even know that story. That's great.
Right.
Um,
And let me give you another example. That we had a time when God was really working among young families. So we had a lot of kids,
right.
and the older people of the church really felt left out.
Mm.
And I didn't know what to do exactly because I wanted to give attention to all these new people coming in. So I approached Don and Shirley Edgren, and I said, could you work with a small group of older people? And it wasn't that small. It got to be 20-something and turned into quite a movement. And they would not only have Bible studies, they would go on trips together. They would have luncheons together, go to restaurants and things like that.
Yeah.
And he and Shirley just picked that up, and he never saw himself as a leader.
Yeah.
We continually asked him to serve on the board. He always turned us down.
Yeah.
But he was a pastor in the sense of he had a pastor's heart.
He did.
And he came alongside those people at that stage of life. And some of them were losing spouses and all, and he was there.
Yeah.
I would go to visit someone at the hospital who was going to have surgery. Don would be there already.
Yeah.
He was their pastor.
Yeah.
He would say, "No, I'm not a pastor."
That's right.
But so God provided for the church by providing people. That happened with Rich Marshall too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No.
You could better jump in when you want to, because I got lots of stories to tell.
No, that's good.
Rich was always concerned about leadership development. He was always saying, we got to do something to prepare people for the future. And he was right.
Yeah.
And that's not my forte. I saw there was an opportunity for training down in California in helping people to identify their spiritual gifts.
Right.
So I asked Rich if he and Nona would like to go down and get trained in that. They did. Yeah. And the church provided for them well in that. But he had to take time off work, and he came back and he provided decades of training, helping people to identify spiritual gifts, and people, it was like a light turned on. Wow. This is serving God? I'm just doing what I love to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clay Allen began to be a chaplain at a racetrack.
Yeah.
And that came out of his spiritual gifts training with Don Edgren, and Don with Rich Marshall, I mean. So, and then of course Nona with the children's ministry was just always phenomenal. So God provided, but it was always through people, it seems.
Yeah. That's really cool and really special. What was, I guess, some of the things that you learned about yourself in this time of pastoring ministry?
I started thinking that a pastor had to do everything. Again, I probably should have been slower in getting started, but I looked at the pastor that I grew up under, and he was a great administrator. And I thought I had to be a great administrator, but I did not have that talent or gift. And while here, I learned that it was okay for me to depend on other people to take care of those kinds of details and structure. But I needed to, what I loved to do was to prepare sermons and tell the sermons in a story for them often, and
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. And I also really loved to come alongside people who were in a crisis situation.
Mm.
Not as a counselor, I was never a good counselor, but to just come alongside them and be with them and hear them and see them and pray with them. And
Yeah.
um, so I was released to do those things,
Yeah.
and other people handled some of the structure. The problem was that um, we didn't really have an adequate way of dealing with conflict.
Mm.
Because I had turned things over to other people, they weren't in a position in terms of the leadership structure
Mm.
to make the call to settle a conflict. So sometimes conflicts stewed,
Mm.
and that became problematic to the church.
Mm. Mm.
So I learned that I didn't have to do it all.
Yeah.
I could turn it over to other people,
Yeah. That's really special.
but there are limitations to that too.
That's very true.
Uh,
Yeah. And so what was, I guess, the process of you stepping away from being the pastor here? And I know you continued in ministry and serving in a lot of other ways, but what was that like for you? Because it had been a long
yeah.
time that you were involved.
Well, what really helped was for the last year when I was part-time, when we were bringing Mike on, we kind of transitioned where I stayed and we worked alongside each other, but I was just working part-time. Um, Mount Hood Hospice found out that I was not full-time, so they approached me about being a chaplain with Mount Hood Hospice.
Yeah.
So um, for 6 years, I served as a chaplain with them, and that was a new uh, form of ministry. I had to. There was no preaching.
Right.
The people I was talking to didn't believe what I believed.
Mm.
I mean, not all of them, but many of them.
Yeah.
And I had to meet them where they were and hopefully represent Jesus well to them. And
Yeah.
so that was a really good experience for me.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you see, I guess this is related, but how did you see things change in the area, or um, more big picture, for the church during that time from sort of the 80s to the
Yeah,
2000s? There's quite a bit that was developing and changing over time.
right. Um, and there was quite a bit changing among the Conservative Baptist Association.
Right.
Now I know there's a name change, and I'm glad there was a name change because that didn't convey very well. Um, but there were changes all over the place,
Yeah.
and um, the um, the community um, um, people began feeling more isolated because it had gone from a community where when you went to the store, you knew almost everyone in the store.
Right.
You to being a place where I don't know anyone in the store.
Yeah.
And people had a hard time who had been here a long time, had a
Mhm.
hard time adjusting to that.
That's very true.
Um, but again, with my background, that's where Chicago came in. That wasn't a problem for me.
Right.
The more people, the better for me. And there were other people in town that said, we got to stop this growth.
Right. Right.
We're going to lose our uniqueness. But
Right.
I thought the field is more ripe and ready for harvest. Let's send more people, Lord.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, so there were those changes. And I think there was more of an emphasis on becoming more precise in our doctrine
Yeah.
and where we stood on different issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, that's wonderful. So when you kind of stepped into, still serving, still doing ministry, I still see you around town meeting with people, talking with people, sharing with people. This is really, I mean, a part of like your DNA. I mean, it's just kind
Yeah.
of intrinsic. When people think, for me, you were my first, real pastor that knew me
Yeah.
and that I knew and that was encouraging to
Yeah.
me. And so people still kind of think of you in this way. There's like
Yeah.
the emblematic vision of Pastor Fred,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, remember when I said that the church originally wanted me to get involved in town?
mm,
One of the things that uh, they approved of was that I would do weddings and funerals for people who weren't part of our church.
oh,
And so I got connected with a lot of people, mostly through um, funerals, because there were people at that time that felt they needed a pastor to lead a
mm,
funeral.
mm,
And it's not true anymore, but that's
yeah,
how they felt. And I made myself available. And I kind of became a pastor uh, for the town. Bob
right.
Drouillard at um, Dover
Over,
Community
yeah,
Church did the same kind of thing.
yeah,
And there were some pastors that would limit themselves to
mm,
just the people in their church.
mm,
But I saw that as an opportunity. The other thing is, I got acquainted. I knew I had to get away from just the people in our church and build relationships in town. So early on, I helped start a book discussion group
mm,
and of just guys.
yeah,
And none of them went to church anywhere. They were not believers in Christ. And um, it was intimidating at first, but we still meet. And it's been uh, over 30 years that we've been working together. And that morphed from um, meeting monthly to where we would have breakfast together on Mondays. We'd get together on Thursdays.
yeah,
Um, we became friends,
yeah,
and we started seeing how we could help students.
yeah,
We raised $30,000 among ourselves to help students who were didn't fit into the normal educational pattern.
yeah,
They had really messed up families and stuff, and um, so we did that. And then the darkest year of my life, when my daughter Joy was so sick and then died, um, those guys were there for me.
yeah,
They didn't know the Lord, but they were friends,
yeah,
and they asked the right questions. And
mm,
I would drop her off at dialysis, come all the way back from Portland to have breakfast with the guys, and go all the way back to Portland to pick her up from dialysis. And just because it felt like um, I was coming up for air.
yeah,
Gary Painter was another one.
mm,
If I could meet with him regularly, and Dennis Simons,
yeah,
those guys, I, every week I get together with them, and it's like a rhythm of replenishment
mm,
or refreshment or
yeah,
something, especially through that year, that crisis year.
yeah,
And it's just continued on. We help one another kind
yeah,
of thing. So I don't know. I don't see myself as serving in,
mm,
I'm not out, passing out tracts or something like
sure,
that.
sure,
I'm just available in the community
yeah,
and made a lot of friends. And
yeah,
so a lot of people knew me, not just from the church,
yeah,
but from my community involvement
yeah,
and the kids being in school and
yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah.
So,
That's wonderful. Yeah, I am one of the things I'm wanting to point out, when I talk about the history and story of how everything came to be, is some of these small examples of faithfulness, these small, steps of obedience and sacrifice that really became, God used that to turn it into really incredible movements and incredible things, or just ways that transformed a family, you know?
mhm.
Um, Maybe you can think through what are some things that you've seen in your years of ministry or that were really encouraging to you of sort of those acts of faithfulness and obedience that seemed small, but that
Mhm.
had such a lasting impact.
Yeah. The one that was, stood out for me for, years is, that family in that old neighborhood when I was a little kid just inviting me to Sunday school.
Yeah,
They gave me a vision of what, uh, a Bible-believing church was like,
yeah,
And, um, then, but within Sandy, let me move it to Sandy,
yeah,
um, there were, there have been so many people who, um, Shirley Crow with, sewing,
yeah.
uh, giving attention to, uh, young people,
Mm,
helping them to learn to sew, putting together quilts for
mm,
people. Um, uh, Dan Reynoldson, um, catching a vision for Mexico,
yeah,
you know, he was never that involved in the church. He would attend,
yeah,
but when, Carrie Tweed came along and talked about Mission for Mexico,
yeah,
Dan went one time and poof,
yeah.
he was aflame, and, um, he and, Doug Jones would, work together on these things, and, uh, they really set the tone for,
Mm,
a guy who Dan came to our church when he was a little kid,
right.
raised by a single mom. He was I never would have guessed that he would have any leadership in the church. He was so withdrawn and
Mm,
quiet.
mm,
And, um, I I would occasionally stand back and say, "Wow."
yeah.
I talked to, the pastor of the church in Gresham that led Rich Marshall to the Lord, and I told him how Rich was the chairman of our elder board,
Yeah.
and he said, "Are you kidding me? Rich Marshall? What?" And, how God transformed people,
Yeah.
you know? He took just our willingness
Yes.
that, "Lord, I'm gonna follow you," and,
Yeah.
it wasn't a big 3-year plan of, "I'm gonna go from this to th," but just gradually,
Yeah.
God was at work.
Yeah.
I don't know if those are
Yeah,
examples that.
that's absolutely great.
Mhm.
I guess what is something you would say to people who would listen to this episode and maybe there's something the Lord's putting on their heart, something that they know, I should take a step here, I should do
Mhm.
this, but it's hard to take those steps. Maybe what's something you would say to encourage them?
Yeah, you can trust God. If
Mm,
this is of course, when we aren't sure, we are wondering usually, "Is this really of God?" Or,
mm,
this would be a major change for me."
right.
So, there is that hesitancy, um, uh, and I would say it would be really a really good idea to share that vision that you have, with someone else,
Mm,
a mature Christian, and talk about it with them and have them pray. Don't let them talk you out of it, but
sure.
let them know, um, and then just step out and, uh, just see how God is going to provide for you, I guess I would almost need more of a specific, like, is it that they want to get involved in children's ministry, or do they want to, do something in the community
Right.
and to
Right.
represent the Lord there? Because God's work isn't just
That's right.
in a church.
That's right.
God's work is I think of what, um, some people have done through, government agencies
Yeah.
that are really making a difference. I think of Laurel Morgan, who,
Mm,
got involved with, uh, Laura Morgan, who got involved with, helping, uh, children that
mm,
were in needed, uh, resettlement or something, and what a difference
yeah.
that makes,
Yeah.
in people's lives.
Yeah.
She was serving the Lord, even though it wasn't in a church.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's very encouraging. I'm personally just so encouraged. And and for me, like I was saying, this was a huge part for me and Ariel saying, is this the right thing? And it was this church. And it was
Mm,
you being so encouraging and asking the right questions for us when we felt like, this is something we feel to go be missionaries.
yeah,
And it was this church that was they just came behind us in such a powerful way of not just the financial support, but just praying for us,
yeah,
just coming back and hearing all the people to say, God woke me up in the middle of the night and I prayed for you.
yeah, yeah,
And so this is just really special to have you on sharing,
right.
you
Well,
know,
and you're in it, giving an example of just what I was talking about, that it's not that you and uh, your wife decided we're going to go and be missionaries, but boy, that involved a lot, moving
yeah,
to a different country, and how are we going to be resourced and all. So you shared it with other people, and God used those other people to encourage you,
yeah,
and
yeah,
um, that's usually how it works.
it's true.
We're supposed to be um, a community,
Yeah,
and that's where the church functions best, when
mm,
we encourage one another and come alongside.
yeah. Well, that's wonderful, Fred. I really appreciate you being willing to sit and share and talk about your story and ministry and everything
Yeah.
like that.
Have so many more people I could talk about.
That's so true.
And some funny experiences, but we'll save that for another time.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks again, Fred, for being here and sharing, and thanks everyone for listening.